Story 1. Sleep apnea. I've had it my whole life and didn't get it fixed until I was 31. The first night I used a continuous positive airway pressure machine, I woke up and felt like I was touched by Jesus. I cannot believe how terrible I felt for my whole life and didn't even know that everyone else didn't feel that way. Story 2. Inverted storm surge. This happens as a hurricane approaches a coastline. If you search, you will find pictures of people walking around in shallow, empty stretches of beach. The storm gets close enough and the low pressure within the eye basically sucks up millions of gallons, pulling it away from shore. Can go for miles sometimes, depending on the strength. Anyway, that water comes back. With prejudice. I grew up on the Alabama Gulf Coast. Walked down to the beach as a hurricane was approaching. I was in middle school and had no idea you couldn't see a hurricane the same way you can a tornado. Anyway, the beach was drained entirely. Not knowing any better, I walked out to the end of the public fishing pier that would normally be about 8 to 9 feet deep. A few minutes passed. I was satisfied with this excursion, so I turned around. About 2/3 of the way back to the shore, I felt the ground rumble, and I instinctively ran as fast as I could. I would say I finally got to about 20 feet from a jetty, rocks piled up to mitigate erosion, and got hit from behind by a wall of water. It actually carried me up and onto the very top of the jetty and slammed me down. I could feel that my sandals left my feet, and by pure luck, they floated up and gently settled right by my hands where I was holding on to the rocks. The water receded slightly, enough for me to get over the jetty and away from the beach. I was so embarrassed that I never told my mom about it and snuck into my house to get a shower and changed. Fast forward to 2017 when I was living on the Florida Gulf Coast. A bunch of people walked down into Tampa Bay right as Hurricane Irma was rolling in. I legitimately got anxiety watching the footage from the local TV station. Needless to say, I've never gone anywhere near the water ahead of a hurricane again. Story 3. Hiking alone in Iceland as a confident hiker can be misleading. A phrase to remember is, the most dangerous hiker is a confident hiker. I found myself lost, had not packed sufficient food, and was stranded on the side of a mountain. It required 20 people to rescue me. I will never make that mistake again. Story 4. Paying my taxes. Worked for myself through college and didn't have a penny to spare, so I just didn't file for 3 years, figuring I'd pay it off when I was done and working. Ironically, my first job after graduating was for the State Tax and Revenue Department. They figured it out quickly and gave me a month to make good. I paid some pretty serious interest and penalties and learned to never do that again. Story 5. Sleep deprivation led me to almost die in a car accident, which I refer to as round 1. Following that, I went mildly psychotic and paranoid, which I refer to as round 2. Just foolish. There are better paths to experiencing adrenaline-fueled euphoria. Story 6. It is a lot easier to get lost in the woods than you think. I wandered away from our campsite a little tipsy because I love looking for mushrooms. I kept going in just a little further until one time when I looked back, I couldn't see my wife and friend back at the site. A few big steps to the left to reorient myself. Wait, maybe a few steps over in this direction. Oh no. I yelled for help, but the sound doesn't carry. The sun was just setting when I went in, but it gets dark a lot faster in the thick of the forest. Panicked, I ran. I cursed at myself. I yelled for help over and over. I tried to stay calm but also decided to keep moving because it was getting dark and cold, and I knew I was in very deep trouble if I didn't get out before nightfall. I spent about an hour and a half totally lost, the longest 90 minutes of my life. Finally, I heard a truck rumbling in the distance and sprinted towards it. I almost cried when I saw the clearing and popped out on a gravel road 3 kilometers west of our campsite. Looking at a map afterward, had I gone in any other direction, it was just forest with no end in sight. My wife and friend said they went into the forest yelling my name. Of course, I was probably too far at that point and heard nothing. I don't know what would have happened if that truck hadn't been going for a late evening drive along the service road. I thought I was going to die. Story 7. I heard one on TV say, "If you're within the sound of my voice, get to your tornado place now." I was a little jaded due to the many times I'd heard this before. Still, I told my son to get in the hallway, then went outside to get our beagles. And I saw it. A 400-meter wide F4 tornado coming down our road. I got in the hallway with just a couple of big couch cushions, pulled my son into my lap, hunched over him and held the pillows over us. He was unhurt. I had a dislocated shoulder with torn ligaments, tendons, and muscle, a splintered ball, a torn rotator cuff, and so on. I was in so much pain from that once all the pieces stopped moving that I didn't even realize I had hundreds of pieces of rock, splinters, and glass embedded in my skin, mainly in my back. Not a single thing even scratched my son. Had I gotten moving the moment he said that on the TV, we would have been sandwiched between two mattresses. We lived, both of us, both dogs and our cat. It seems like we were all huddled under those two cushions. One of the dogs had a single glass shard in his back left side. Fell out when he started walking. Me, I had pieces of stuff being pushed out of my skin for the next month. The house? Nothing much left. Of a $290,000 house, it took $273,000 to rebuild it. The foundation and much of the framing were okay. This was the Enterprise, Alabama, tornado on March 1st, 2007. There were 8 students killed at the high school and 1 elderly woman just down the road from the school. Over 50 were injured from this in the area. Our daughter was at the school. Took 4 to 5 hours to find her. She was badly traumatized from the experience, but luckily, only had light injuries. This experience affected our family mentally for years, if not a lifetime. There are so many others who are as well. We did not have a shelter and did not put one in. Basements are not common in that area. I was stationed at Fort Rucker with 2 years to go until retirement. Tornadoes of that kind were not common to that area of the US. With climate change, they are now. Insurance paid for most of the repairs and replacement of our house and stuff. Non-recoverable depreciation took a big chunk out of our savings, though. This is something so few people realize will financially affect them in a large loss like this. We currently live in Florida. We've been through a few hurricanes turned tropical storms, but not a direct hit. We care for my mother-in-law, who is 83 and has dementia. Once she passes, we are moving, likely to Tennessee near our daughter. I would take a tornado over a hurricane. We were 18 miles west of the damage path of Hurricane Michael. What we saw of the damage from that during recovery efforts was staggering. I have been to war in the Middle East. While those experiences helped me process that the sheer destruction visited upon Florida was mind-numbing. 2 years ago, we spent 8 hours in a strong tropical storm with 70 mph winds and gusts to 90. The tornado lasted less than 2 minutes from when I first saw it to when I was stepping outside to survey the area. Except for the minor intrusion of water from our pool, we didn't have a single bit of flooding from the tornado. With my combat experience, very little scares me these days. There was surprisingly little fear during the tornado, considering. Most of it came after while trying to find our daughter. That tropical storm, the length of time, the wind, and the amount of rain, that was scary. My injuries were more extensive than just the shoulder and cuts/bruises. Due to a TBI from an explosion in Iraq, I suffered a secondary TBI from the tornado as well. My shoulder was put back in place by EMTs in the area, and surgery didn't happen until after we moved back in. Too much to do. The TBI wasn't recognized or treated until after we had moved back in. Honestly, I knew I had another TBI, but my family needed me to be strong for them, especially our kids. Once things settled down, I started getting regular headaches. Next thing you know, I'm at the Shepherd Center in Atlanta for 4 months and also 2 months of hyperbaric treatments in New Orleans. We are all doing well these days. When we are all together, we often talk about that day. It is as much a part of our family history as any other significant event. Story 8. Pain. Essentially, just because you can tolerate a lot of pain doesn't mean you should. Listen to your body. You are feeling pain for a reason, so don't push yourself just because you can handle it. Story 9. Do not work full-time and go to school full-time. I was indifferent. I believed I could achieve anything I set my mind to. However, it overwhelmed me. I tried to suppress my stress, but my brain and body did not cooperate. I started waking up in the middle of the night with panic attacks, thinking I was dying. I developed agoraphobia. In places like airports and malls, I would experience vertigo. I felt dizzy and lightheaded, as if I was floating, which would trigger a panic attack of questioning what was wrong with me. This cycle would repeat. I visited a doctor, and he told me I was doing way too much. He advised me to stop. He was right. So, it turns out you can do too much. And even if you can force your way through, your brain and body will eventually resist you. Story 10. I had an extremely close friend for years, and they were always so nice to me. Went above and beyond all the time, and I felt so appreciated and loved as a friend. This was for years, mind you. One thing that was a red flag that I ignored and I mentioned to my partner that was concerning was that this friend was really horrible to people they didn't like or felt somehow wronged or slighted by. I remember saying I just need to make sure I am never on their bad side. Well, long story short, always judge someone's character to include how they treat people, even if they do not necessarily like them. If they talk badly, spread rumors, etc. about others, they will likely at some time do it to you. Edit to add. I also co-owned a business with this best friend. And so my second advice would be don't ever go into business with a friend, even if they have no red flags. Don't do it. Story 11. Gamma hydroxybutyric acid. No hangover. Makes you more social. Like alcohol but better. Like MDMA but better. No calories. You feel great about yourself. You are more empathetic. You can score it for super cheap. You never have to feel bad again. You can use it to manage your sleep. You can use it to manage everything you don't like. You can do it every day and feel great. You can use it to sleep because you can't anymore because you are so addicted. You can use it around the clock so that you don't go into withdrawal. You can use it after you have a seizure from doing it so much. You can use it to forget about the fact that you ended up in a hospital because of it. You can use it to forget about the fact that no one wants to hang out with you anymore because you are highly erratic and out of control. You can use it to try to end your life because you ruined it by doing it constantly. You can detox and have the worst few weeks of your life and still crave it. You can spend 4 years in treatment and recovery and have to completely rebuild your life from scratch and still crave it all these years later. You can go through your life sober for years, but knowing that if you ever have another dose of it, you will binge until you are very shortly thereafter dead. Are we still having fun? Story 12. Dehydration and overheating. Being covered in ice in an ambulance and experiencing extremely dark urine will change your perspective. Edit. One thing I have never really explained to anyone is how big of a personal victory it was for me when I regained the ability to work out hard and push myself. The experience I described above took a huge amount of recovery physically and psychologically, and when I got back to a healthy state of going hard, not being afraid of my heart rate getting up into the cardio zones, etc., was like regrowing a severed limb, winning the lottery, and coming back from the darkest inner fears. I don't know if I could ever communicate how significant this was for me. Story 13. Regular checkups and screenings. Get the colonoscopy on schedule, get the skin check yearly. Get your prostate exam or pap smear. If you smoked or are at high risk, get scans for lung cancer regularly. Talk to your doctor, find out what you should get and when, and follow the schedule. I have lung cancer, one of the 20% of people with lung cancer who never smoked, and the difference between the outcomes from stage 1 to stage 4 is literally life and death. Do not wait for symptoms, do not put off getting that weird mole checked. Story 14. Alcohol led me to learn a very harsh lesson through tough experiences. The anxiety, depression, weight gain, and apathy formed a horrendous cycle of living hell. I have been sober for 69 days today. Woo! Story 15. I was in the ocean with my then wife. We had gotten out to the sandbar and were just chilling. She was on a beach raft sunning, and I was gently pushing us around. I had my back to the shore and I saw something go by. It was sofa-sized and it went by pretty fast. I had this immediate understanding of what was going on. I am standing in chest-deep water in prime shark attack territory. I said, "Hey, let's go in," and started pushing toward shore. It went by between us and the shore. Then there were 2 of them, then 3. We still had to cross the ditch, and I was realizing that we really might not make it. But it turned out to be dolphins, not sharks. I am quite a bit more cautious in the ocean now. Story 16. Pedestrian safety was compromised when I was hit by a car while crossing the street. After receiving cardiopulmonary resuscitation on site and falling into a coma in the hospital, I had to learn to walk and talk all over again. Now, I triple-check both ways even when I have the right of way. Story 17. Flipping the bird at a driver. It's been 40 years since I tried. On that particular adventure, I was on a 4-lane road, 2 in each direction, Route 29 through Virginia. I was going maybe 5 miles per hour over the speed limit to pass a slow car when a car came up on my tail. The road wasn't limited access and had a lot of blind driveways. Going more than 55 really wasn't safe. The highway, named Dixie Highway, has also been referred to as Dixie Highway. Anyway, I passed the slow car as quickly as I could safely do so, then pulled over to the right as soon as I was safely in front of the slow vehicle. The guy who had been riding my tail passed me at a high rate of speed, and I held up the third finger as he passed. Oops. The driver obviously saw it as he pulled in front of me the instant he was past me and jammed on his brakes. I was so relieved that I didn't lose control of the car. Since then, I avoid anything that might induce a road rage incident. The satisfaction of displaying your annoyance from the comfort of your car isn't worth the consequences.